What is Momoshiki up to? Boruto and Momoshiki's dynamic has been nothing short of a mystery ever since the end of part 1. So far, we've only gotten a glimpse of the full story, and that glimpse has only led to further questions. What exactly happened with Momoshiki over the time skip? When exactly did this happen? How and why has Momoshiki remained silent all this time, and what is Momoshiki's plan moving forward? Let's dissect these questions and the resulting implications. So what do we know? As revealed in chapter 15, pretty much every fan was right, and at some point over the time skip, Boruto started to lose control of himself because of the karma, which is why he's so afraid to use the karma seal now. That's about it. The rest is vague and up for interpretation, which is what we're here for. This leads me to my first question. When exactly did this ordeal happen? Obviously it was during the code fight like Boruto says, but more specifically, did it happen before Sasuke/Code's eye installed so Boruto could get away, or did it happen after Boruto ran away? Depending on the narrative intent, the timing largely depends on why Boruto hadn't used karma since leaving the village prior to his encounter with Code. We can infer that Sasuke likely wanted Boruto to focus on training his base ninja skills rather than relying on the karma seal for power, similar to Naruto's training in the Akatsuki suppression and pain arcs, where he wanted to master his own powerful abilities instead of constantly relying on the Nine Tails for power. However, was Sasuke merely doing this to make a point about how Boruto should approach his training to maximize his potential, or was he doing this because he feared that Boruto would lose control if he kept relying on the karma seal, much like when Yamato told Naruto to stop using the Nine Tails' power? The answer to that question leads us to different probable outcomes in the code fight. If Sasuke was merely trying to improve Boruto's base, it's likely Boruto would rely on his karma seal pretty early in the fight, as he already knows how strong Code is and wouldn't hold back for any reason. But if Sasuke told Boruto specifically not to use his karma seal anymore, then it's likely that Boruto only used it out of emotion when he didn't want to leave Sasuke behind. It's technically possible to flip-flop these without it being completely unreasonable, but it makes much more sense with these pairings. With that in mind, the possible nuances of the fight revolving around Boruto's karma situation could vary greatly. Emotionally, I think Boruto using his karma when he doesn't want to leave Sasuke behind hits pretty hard. Kind of like Naruto going 6 tails after Pain stabbed Hinata, and the idea of Momoshiki just leaving Sasuke behind when Boruto wants to stay and help can work pretty well. However, if they choose the other route, they have the opportunity to let Boruto's fear of losing control make him falter throughout the fight, amplifying the tension greatly even though we already know the outcome. And in terms of the plot, I think it makes much more sense if Boruto used karma before Sasuke/Code's eye. To start, Boruto makes it seem like the reason he hasn't used karma since is because of his experience over the time skip, rather than because it was something he and Sasuke already suspected he shouldn't do. I won't rule the idea out completely, as I do think it would make logical sense from Sasuke's perspective and can work pretty well narratively, but it doesn't feel like that's the route they're going. It's also a little unsatisfying for Sasuke to give up the fight after landing a critical hit on Code without Boruto even using his full power yet. Maybe it's just me, but I don't like that. The fact that Sasuke thinks they stand no chance against Code despite managing to slash Code's eye while he and Boruto seem unscathed tells me that this hit was a stroke of luck, rather than some strategic ploy they can continue to take advantage of. Perhaps the distraction is what allowed Sasuke to hit Code in the first place, especially since Code wouldn't expect Boruto to lose control of his karma for any reason, since he thinks it's just Amato's reconstructed karma thanks to omnipotence altering his memories. This approach also indicates that Sasuke likely prioritized Boruto's base ninja skills rather than relying on the karma seal for power, similar to Naruto's training in the Akatsuki suppression and pain arcs. This makes perfect sense from Sasuke's perspective and aligns perfectly with his last words to Boruto. Of course, this would apply to the other situation as well, but in this case it's a result of Sasuke using his wisdom and experiences with Orochimaru and Itachi and imparting his shinobi way onto Boruto, rather than merely taking a precaution out of necessity, making the impact feel much stronger in my opinion. In addition, Code is nowhere to be found when Boruto retrieves Sasuke's sword, but he makes it abundantly clear that Boruto was helpless against him 2 years ago. This implies that Boruto fled, Code beat Sasuke off screen and left, and then Boruto returned to find Sasuke. I've seen some theories floating around that Borushiki played a role in Sasuke's defeat because Sasuke's arm falls down between a couple panels as if he only just became a tree, and I'll admit, that is weird, but given the points I just made, as well as the points I will continue to make, it seems most likely that Sasuke was defeated by Code and his army alone, regardless of anything Momoshiki may have done earlier in the fight. Speaking of Momoshiki, this actually leads me to my next question. What actually happened when Boruto lost control? Was this the standard case of Momoshiki taking over, or were there any new elements at play? On one hand, Boruto's dialogue makes it seem like it was different from before, since he said, "That's when I sensed it," something similar to the feeling I got whenever Momoshiki possessed me, rather than just saying, "That's when I sensed it, Momoshiki was taking over." And he said it felt like he was dying even though he was still conscious, which he's never done before. On the other hand, Boruto previously described being taken over as feeling like watching someone else move and fight using his body while his mind was too foggy to really remember anything, which sounds pretty similar aside from the dying part, and he did say it was similar. So is this a different situation from before, or is this just a new way of describing it for the Two Blue Vortex recap? Given that this wouldn't be the first time something was recapped strangely in Two Blue Vortex compared to part 1, and I'm not really sure why Momoshiki's mechanism for taking over would change all of a sudden, I'm inclined to believe this is the same situation as before. So the question is, did Momoshiki manage to do anything, or did Boruto manage to regain control before anything bad could happen? Based on how Boruto describes it and the other details we know, it seems like Boruto just felt like Momoshiki was taking over, but managed to stop it before anything bad happened, similar to when his karma resonated with Kawaki's in chapter 9. Either that, or Sasuke or Code must have immediately subdued Momoshiki before he had a chance to do anything. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense for Boruto to say that Momoshiki has been completely silent for the past 3 years, given that this little occurrence happened 2 years ago. I think taking over and creating mayhem would break the silence. This tells us that Boruto is still afraid of Momoshiki, or rather, afraid of losing control to Momoshiki. This was made obvious by his reaction to his karma activating in chapter 9. Despite how strong he's become, he clearly lacks confidence in his ability to simply overpower Momoshiki. Interesting how that wasn't the case in the prophecy arc, but that will be the topic of an upcoming video. In any case, I do like the fact that Boruto retains this fear. It's one of his only forms of internal conflict right now, and I sincerely hope they go beyond the surface level of Boruto's fears. Similarly, Koji is afraid of Momoshiki taking over as well. He hasn't discussed it directly yet, but his reaction in chapter 9 indicates that Koji has seen a future where Momoshiki becomes a problem, meaning the threat of Momoshiki is still present. This is something I'd like to see explained directly in the story, with Koji explaining the concern in what their last resort is should Boruto lose control, or if the most secure future requires Boruto's eventual death just like Kawaki intended. Now given the threat level Momoshiki appears to pose, the question is, how did Boruto manage to regain control? The only 4 possibilities are that Boruto fought off Momoshiki's control, he deactivated karma before anything could happen, Sasuke quickly subdued Momoshiki, or Code quickly subdued Momoshiki. In all 4 cases, this would have needed to happen almost immediately, before Momoshiki had a chance to do anything. Now given that Boruto and Koji both clearly lack confidence in Boruto's ability to simply overpower Momoshiki, we can safely rule out this option. Similarly, given that Momoshiki's process for taking over should be no different from that of the prophecy arc, since the karma had already finished extracting and Boruto and Momoshiki's minds were already crossing over as a result of Momoshiki exchanging his data for Boruto's, and Momoshiki was able to take over Boruto extremely quickly whether the karma was active or not, and Boruto was never able to just deactivate karma to make Momoshiki go away, it seems highly unlikely that Boruto resolved the problem by simply deactivating karma. Otherwise, I don't think Boruto and Koji would be quite as scared in chapter 9. I think Boruto only got away with that one because his karma was resonating with Kawaki's, which is why his karma started to activate in the first place. I won't rule this option out completely like the first one since I do see how this could work, but compared to the remaining options, I think this option falls flat as a boring, narratively insignificant choice. Now the other two are pretty much the same reasoning within the plot, with the only difference being that Sasuke is obviously the more impactful choice within the narrative, given that he's Boruto's master and he said multiple times that he would subdue Momoshiki if Boruto ever lost control, only for that to never happen. So it would be nice to finally pay off that line. That said, are there any other pieces of evidence pointing in this direction? An interesting observation to note is that Code finds no abnormality in Boruto not using his karma seal. He doesn't think to himself, still not using his karma, eh? Or, strange, why isn't he using his karma? Likewise, he doesn't taunt Boruto by saying, why don't you try using your karma this time, Boruto? Maybe then it won't be so easy for me, haha, or anything of that nature. Unlike Boruto's repetitive use of Rasengans, Code makes no thought or comment on the karma matter whatsoever, even though this would have been the perfect time to do so given how incredibly strange it must be from Code's perspective for Kawaki to randomly stop using the karma seal he's relied on for so long in favor of Rasengans, which he's never used before. This indicates that whatever happened with Momoshiki, Code was there to witness it himself, explaining his lack of confusion for why Boruto isn't using the karma seal in this rematch, because he already knows why. This is actually another small piece of evidence that Boruto likely briefly lost control during the Code fight, rather than after running away. We don't know exactly what happened, but if Momoshiki's horn started to grow as Boruto's karma spread across his body, it would be understandable for either Sasuke or Code to react preemptively out of precaution, as they both have had some pretty nasty experiences dealing with Borushiki. In which case, perhaps Code charged at Boruto, either seeing an opportunity while Boruto lost control or to subdue Momoshiki before he could pose a threat, while Sasuke took advantage of the opportunity to strike while Code was preoccupied with Boruto, slashing Code's eye in the process. From here, you could either have Code actually subdue Momoshiki somehow while Sasuke catches him off guard, or have Code simply try to subdue or kill Momoshiki, while Sasuke manages to chop off Boruto's horn, thus restoring Boruto's control, and slash Code's eye in one fell swoop while Code is distracted. I personally think the second option is way cooler and ties all the plot threads and narrative elements together really nicely, even things that have yet to be paid off like Boruto's horn. At the very least, this is my favorite option. That gives us a rough idea of what specifically may have occurred over the time skip and when exactly it may have happened, but there are still some questions pertaining to current events. Firstly, how and why has Momoshiki remained silent all this time? The how is a little funny. As we know, Boruto and Momoshiki's thoughts were crossing over quite frequently in the prophecy arc, which is why Boruto even saw part of his prophecy in the first place. So to avoid this problem in chapter 76 when he didn't want to tell Boruto about Eida's ability yet, Momoshiki had to blank his mind so that none of his thoughts could overlap with Boruto's. Now it's one thing to do that for like 2 minutes while Boruto's asking you questions, but it's another thing to do that for 3 whole years. That's pretty insane. What is he, SpongeBob? Did he clear his mind of anything that isn't fine dining and breathing?
Empty your mind of everything that doesn't have to do with fine dining. Fine dining and breathing.
Besides the ridiculousness of this feat, this is another indication that Momoshiki likely didn't get the chance to do anything, as I doubt his mind would remain completely blank if he had managed to take control. More importantly though, the question is why Momoshiki is doing this, more specifically than just, I don't want my thoughts to cross over with Boruto's. Why does he care? Truth be told, I think this was a lesson learned, and it relates to Momoshiki's plan moving forward. As Kashin Koji said, the future is not set in stone, and the more you tell people about the future, the more the nature of that future will change, leading to that original future becoming increasingly less likely, instead creating new complex branches that make predicting the future increasingly difficult. Now we don't know what specific ability Momoshiki is using, but this concept should apply to all future sight abilities, including Momoshiki's ability and Koji's 10 directions. In other words, Momoshiki likely caused his own downfall by constantly reminding Boruto of the prophecy. More specifically, telling Boruto that he'll despair, that he'll lose his will to live, that Momoshiki will take over permanently, and that his fate was already decided. Presumably, Momoshiki thought that telling Boruto in advance would make him despair harder, seeing as everything unfolded exactly as Momoshiki predicted, but in reality, it only reduced the shock value of the moment and allowed Boruto to mentally prepare for what's to come, thereby causing Boruto not to despair as Momoshiki foretold. It also spurred Boruto's competitive nature and desire to prove Momoshiki wrong. It's kinda weird for Momoshiki to not know about this given that he supposedly has an intimate understanding of all Shinjutsu, but regardless, that weakness still exists and Momoshiki should have accidentally exploited it as a result of his actions. This leads me to my last question. What is Momoshiki's plan moving forward? Truth be told, the story really hasn't given us much to work with, but in light of the previous point, I suspect that Momoshiki intends to take over just long enough to force Boruto to despair by any means necessary. Last time, he tried to let things play out on their own, only briefly stepping in to free Kawaki to ensure that things play out properly. However, by constantly rubbing it in Boruto's face, he may have inadvertently changed the future just like Koji said would happen if he and Boruto told everyone about Koji's visions with 10 directions. So this time, taking another crack at Boruto's prophecy, rather than letting events unfold naturally, Momoshiki intends to create that future himself. Not by looking into Boruto's future, but by personally taking away what Boruto holds most dear, using Boruto's own flesh and blood to do so, of course. I realize that might not be the most insightful answer of all time, but that's about as specific as we can confidently get at this particular time. All that's left is the matter of how Momoshiki would make Boruto despair. Would he kill Sasuke for real, blaming him for the prophecy failing? Would he kill Sarada, who he knows Boruto loves, blaming her for the prophecy failing since she's immune to omnipotence and ask Sasuke to help Boruto? Would he kill Sumire for similar reasons? Would he kill Himawari knowing that she might be the person Boruto cares about most? Would he try to free Naruto and Hinata from Daikoku 10 so he can kill them? Would he try to force feed Kawaki to the Ten Tails before Jura wants to? Would he try to destroy the whole village? Or would he go for a combination of these options? I don't see what else Momoshiki could do to break Boruto completely. One of these options seems the most likely to me, but let me know what you think in the comments. I think that covers pretty much everything there is to say about this time skip ordeal with Boruto and Momoshiki, so let me know what you think about each of these questions. When exactly do you think this event took place during the code fight? What exactly do you think happened? How do you think Boruto regained control? How and why do you think Momoshiki has remained silent all this time? And what do you think Momoshiki's plan is moving forward? Let me know your answers in the comments below. Watch this video here for more of my content, subscribe and like the video to help me against the YouTube algorithm, and turn on notifications so you don't miss out. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.